Okay, so two things before we get into this. One, I have to be slightly quieter than normal because everyone is asleep except for myself and my brother, who is in the opposite room of me. And also, this is a fair warning to anyone jumping into this video too stupid to read the title and the thumbnail, that being that there are spoilers in this video. So if you do not want to get spoiled with Devil May Cry 5 and you want to leave everything as a mystery up until launch, up until the point where you have played the game from point A to point B, then I suggest clicking off of the video. But that being said, for those of you that are staying, I hope you all enjoyed this trailer breakdown, and without any further delays, let's get right into it. Okay, so right off the bat, this is something that I haven't really talked about when it came to the previous trailers, and that is the demon tree that's growing in Redgrave City. Now, one of the things that I'm very well aware of is that the dev team for Devil May Cry 5 had taken some inspiration from anime, and sometimes they would refer to Dragon Ball moves specifically, like the Kamehameha wave. And one of the things that I felt like was a bit of a parallel, or just maybe coincidental, that this was possibly an inspiration for the game, is that this tree seems to be very similar to the tree of might from Dragon Ball Z. And I don't know if maybe I'm just crazy and maybe I'm just exaggerating, but I just feel like that the connections are very similar. Especially when you go back and you look at some of the older trailers and specifically look at the boss fight for Goliath and Nero. Goliath makes note that he's going to try to get all of the fruit so that way he can rule the underworld and no one else can, which is very similar to the Tree of Might in Dragon Ball Z, where if you eat the fruit from the tree, you gain a significant amount of power. So I just found that little parallel interesting, and I figure I might as well just bring it up since it's not something that I've really talked about in previous trailer breakdowns that I've done in my channel, or on my channel rather. Now, two things before I move on from this particular point. One, I did not think that the tree would actually grow out into space, so it's going to be very interesting to see this thing grow and change as the game progresses. Also, since I mentioned the fruit, and since it's something that's not really been talked about but vaguely mentioned in the previous promotional material, such as the demo, I should note that power should be a very key word, especially in this trailer, because there's a specific character that revolves around power for those of you that might not be aware but are willing to get spoiled today. Okay, so right here we see that Nero, Nico, Lady, and Trish are all on the tree as it's growing. And while this is happening, while it's going out into space, Nero is running pretty much downhill trying to reach Trish so that way he can get into the van and be in a better position than just running on this thing while it's going out into space. So I find that really interesting, and I wonder what else will happen during this cutscene.
Who dares interfere?
So then here, what's really nice is that we get a close-up shot of Urizen, and what's happening is that Dante in his Majin or Shin Devil Trigger form is rising up beneath him, basically showing off that he's not out of the fight yet and he's got more power, ready to just show off and fight against Urizen, whatever it takes. So I really want to see the context of this scene in particular, especially because this will be the first time we'll actually see Dante using this Devil Trigger form in a cutscene. So we get a short clip of Nero and some shots of Dante. I want to gloss over the Nero portion of it because there's not a whole lot to go on other than he's got Red Queen and he's doing some Red Queen combos, and it's unclear if he used like a breakage move for Tomboy in order to enhance the sword, or if you can actually upgrade the sword to a further potential that we're just unaware of at this point in time, making it even more broken than what we're used to. So it'll be interesting to see what'll happen with that. Now, on that note, I want to talk about Dante, because Dante seems to be able to not only trickster dash twice in the air, have a sword that can have like phantom hits that follow up with the initial hits of the weapon that he's using, but summon swords, which is very interesting. And in regards to the summon swords, I'm not sure if Dante is going to be able to use them as a separate projectile or if they're tied to this new sword, but it'll be very interesting to see, because Dante will probably not use them the same way that Virgil uses them, just like Nero does not use his summon swords the way that Virgil used his. Nero was specifically using his summon swords in his DT form, whereas Virgil could use them at any point in time, and he could use them offensively and defensively. And something that they also borrowed from the reboot in DMC4 SE was the ability to trick to enemies. And while that was not, in my opinion at least, the best decision, it was a new thing that's something both Nero and Dante could not do, especially in Nero's case, given that he does use summoned swords. So it'll be interesting to see what Dante could do with his take on the projectile-based weapon, and if this is going to be a separate projectile-based weapon, or if it's tied to the actual sword that Dante is using, which at the moment I've heard rumors that this is an upgraded version of Rebellion, or that this is actually a new sword, just literally taking the name Dante, kind of similar to how Sparta takes Sparta's name. Now here's a portion that I actually want to stop at, because I do feel like Devil May Cry 5 is taking aspects that could have worked from DMC and applying it and rewriting it and changing it for the better for this game to where it makes sense and it's actually enjoyable, or it's very interesting for lore. I think that this particular area that Dante's in front of might actually be his childhood home after it had been burnt down, because there is a portion in the trailer that cuts to a flashback scene that implies that his house might have been set on fire, but we'll get to that portion when we do. I just wanted to point this out right before we actually get to that flashback portion.
What's happening now?
Oh god, I thought it was over.
This isn't good. We're gonna get dragged into this.
And this is an interesting portion as well. While the tree is falling apart, Trish mentions that she thought it was over, but it clearly seems that something else is going on. Perhaps Urizen is not the true final boss, and there is something that I want to speculate, but I want to get to a specific portion before I start throwing out ideas. Also, right before we move on, this is a nice shot of Gilgamesh in his boss form. I guess we're going to see him from a distance, and then we're going to go right up to him as either Dante, or, I'm sorry, not Dante, Nero, or potentially V, and fight this boss. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Being born useless and human.
Now this is interesting because Urizen calls Nero useless and human, but Nero isn't technically a truly full human. He is a hybrid of sorts. But what's interesting is that if you go on Capcom's Devil May Cry Twitter page, they have a bio for Nero's character. And when you look under species, it says hybrid ? Which means that there might be more to Nero than they've let on in the past. And what we could have assumed him being just a quarter demon and mostly human to be true might not have been true at all, but I want to share that idea later on in the trailer because there's something specific I want to show to kind of back this little theory up that my friend Arian had come up with. Shout outs to him, Arian, if you're watching. Thanks for watching. I hope you like me using that idea and sharing that idea around just to get people talking. But that being said, I do want to talk about that idea, but I need to show a specific part in the trailer for this. So that being said, keep this little idea in the back of your mind. Keep the thoughts of Nero being a hybrid question mark while you're watching this and while we get to that portion that I'm talking about. So that way you can speculate as I'm breaking this trailer down, I guess.
I will show you your worst nightmares. I will give you despair and...
Now, something interesting to note here is that while we get our first glimpse of Virgil, we do not see V around. And I say that because we only see Dante and Nero get pushed back by the explosion caused by Virgil's appearance.
death.
Come here. If I don't return.
Okay, and so this is the portion where we get that flashback sequence with what I assume is Dante, but given how Capcom has been retconning and changing things about the lore, this could actually be from Virgil's perspective this time around. I don't know, but one of the key things here is that there is a fire going around in the background, so perhaps this will tie into the future segment if Dante is actually going to go through his old childhood home after it had been burnt down and just reminiscing of the traumatizing events that have caused him nothing but misery throughout his life.
You must run. By yourself, alone. You must change your name. Forget your past and start a new life. As someone else. A new beginning.
There is no mountain too tall to overcome. We will be.
And then here we see Dante get bodied again by Urizen, so it's very clear that he will be fighting him more than one time, attempting to defeat him with any sort of means, whether it be using rebellion, whether it be using his father's sword, Sparta, or potentially even going into, or actually we already know that he will go into his Shin or Majin Devil trigger form, so this is probably what will drive him to go further and beyond.
I have plans for the both of you.
Damn it, V. This is my last request.
So something that we've all speculated is that V was dying and that he would not be very strong, that he was going to be very weak, and that was very apparent with the way that his face and skin looked like. But one of the things that is very interesting is that he mentions that he has one last request for Nero. It's not very clear as to what this request would be, but this could imply that V will sacrifice himself in order for Nero and Dante to be successful in their quest at stopping Urizen and stopping this demon tree.
Looks like we still got a long ways to go.
This is your legacy.
Now, I know people have been really looking into this particular scene with Dante waving goodbye because they're thinking that this could potentially be the very last game that Dante's in. And I know they've been also mentioning that, well, the Sons of Sparta legacy has been dubbed to be the very end. This portion is, or this game is going to be the very end of that legacy and that saga. And in my personal opinion, I don't think that necessarily means that we'll see the end of Dante or even potentially the end of Virgil. I just think that what they're doing is they're concluding a story aspect of the series that technically spans between two games, Devil May Cry 3 and Devil May Cry 1. So I do think that with Devil May Cry 5 they wanted to conclude that, but not necessarily say that Dante is going away forever, or that Virgil, if he is returning for good this time, that he's going away forever and that we would never be able to see these characters in the story or play as these characters ever again. I just think that what they're doing is they're ready to just conclude a storyline rather than conclude showing Dante like for good. I think that the smart thing to do would be not to necessarily replace Dante immediately, but have a new character similar to Nero that could fill in the roles and the role of Dante in the sense of they have a very similar personality that's not exactly the same, but can be distinguished between themselves and Dante's, as well as having the capabilities of their gameplay. And by that I mean the ability to style switch and things of that nature, because I don't think that Nero, as much as I think he's a good character, I don't think that he on his own can really carry a Devil May Cry game, especially because he's not really on the same level as not the same level of depth as Dante is. So I think that Nero, as I mentioned before, is a good character, and I do think that there are unique aspects to Nero, but for him to basically fill in the role of Dante, to me, isn't really a good idea, and I hope that's not the case. But I do think that, if anything, the most likely scenario is that this game is only concluding a story point, as I mentioned before, that's carried on from Devil May Cry 3 and Devil May Cry 1, and finally wrapping that story point up so that way they can move on and talk about or discuss new things within the Devil May Cry lore. Speaking of Nero, this is the particular shot that I was hoping I could talk about in today's trailer breakdown. This was also the portion that I was talking about that my friend Arian had come up with an interesting theory for. And in this scene, we see Nero seemingly go into his devil trigger form. It looks like he's sprouting like these phantom-like wings. And one thing that my friend Arian had come up with as far as a theory is concerned is that what if Nero is also part angel? Only in the sense that because of the fact that the bio for his species lists him as hybrid ? Maybe he also is another species, given the fact that Virgil does not really take much interest in humans, so maybe this would make a little bit more sense in that regard. And to Arian's credit, I will say that it is one of those things where they could have taken another aspect of DMC Devil May Cry and just made it better and just wrote it in a better way to where it's not just a giant mess and doesn't make sense and isn't really interesting. I could see this working out if they have the right writing. It would be really interesting to see a character who is not only a demon but an angel and also a human, but time will tell. I do also think that there is a possibility of Nero just potentially having his race being put into question after he had lost his Devil Bringer. Perhaps with him losing it, maybe he is just reverted to just being a human. Who knows? But it is a possibility, and I did want to throw out that theory out there. So hopefully I can see some interesting comments and suggestions as to whether or not this theory could possibly work out, or maybe if there's any other theories. Also, on a side note, I will say that it's very easy to miss, but you can look at the bottom right corner of this actual portion of the trailer, and you'll notice that where Nero's right arm is, he's actually bleeding as he's going into DT. So could it be that he's possibly regrowing his arm as he's going into DT? And here we have the final shot of the trailer. It's just a shot of Virgil's back, very reminiscent to DMC4 SE when it was initially teased, with Virgil just saying, "I need more power." So I like that this is a bit of a callback, and I like that they're really trying to tease fans that yes, he's back and there's more to him than what it appears. I am very interested to see what Virgil's role in this game is going to be, and maybe we could potentially fight him or something like that. I think that would be really cool. But that all being said, I'd like to know what you all thought of this trailer breakdown. Are there things that I might have missed, and what do you hope for the final game once it releases this Friday, March 8th? Anyway, my name has been BioDevilDom. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.